If you told me when I was 15 that a skill I was learning on YouTube would eventually make me my first $1,000 online, I probably wouldn't have believed you. But that's exactly what happened. And the interesting thing is, graphic design wasn't some business I started with thousands of dollars. I didn't have investors, I didn't have a huge following, and I definitely didn't have everything figured out. I learned a skill, got better at it, put my work online, and eventually found people who were willing to pay me for it. So if you're trying to make your first $1,000 from a side hustle, I don't think you need to find some secret business model. I think you need to do three things: develop a skill people will pay for, get really good at it, and put yourself out there. And I'm going to show you exactly how I did it. I started learning graphic design when I was around 15 years old, and honestly, YouTube was probably my biggest teacher. I was watching tutorials, learning different programs, trying different techniques, and honestly, just making things. I did take one course in high school on graphic design, but at that point in my life, I had already learned through YouTube more than I learned in the course itself, so I was quite, ahead from the other people in the class. In fact, I was, helping friends who were also taking that class with me, because they obviously didn't know Photoshop as well as I did at that point. So I wasn't thinking, I'm going to build a six-figure design business. I was just genuinely interested in graphic design and wanted to get better because I enjoyed making things in it. I made things for other people, I made things for myself, and I actually had fun learning and using the programs. And I think that's actually a really important place to start. You don't necessarily need to know exactly how you're going to make money from a skill when you first start learning it. You just need to find something you're actually interested in enough that you're willing to spend hundreds or even thousands of hours getting better at it. Because nobody's going to pay you just because you watched a few YouTube videos. You need to actually become good at it. And that's what I spent years doing. I practiced, I experimented, I made things that weren't very good, especially at the start, right? A lot of people think they need to be really good at something when they first start doing it, but for almost all of us, that's not going to be the case. You're not going to be an expert at first. It takes time, it takes years most of the time to get really good at something, and that's just something that you need to realize. But like I said, I made things that weren't very good, and then I made them again and again and again, and over time I got better. So the first step to making your first $1,000 is pretty simple. Develop a skill that people actually want to pay for. And this is where I think a lot of people get stuck, right? They start looking for, what side hustle can I do? What's the easiest way to make $1,000? What's the best passive income idea? And I think that you're asking the wrong question. Instead, ask, what can I get really good at that solves a problem for someone else that they're going to be willing to pay me for eventually? Graphic design was my answer. But it could be a lot of things, right? Video editing, photography, web design, copywriting, social media management. It could even be tutoring, coding, bookkeeping, whatever you want, and preferably whatever you actually enjoy doing. The specific skill matters less than this. Does someone have a problem that your skill can solve, and are they willing to pay you to solve it? That's a business. And you don't have to be the best person in the world. You just need to become good enough that someone would rather pay you than try to do it themselves. Once you figure out what skill you want to develop, get really good at it. And this is the part that, honestly, nobody really wants to hear, right? It takes time. I started graphic design at 15. I didn't immediately start making hundreds of dollars every week. I spent years learning. I watched tutorials. I practiced. I looked at what other designers were doing and I tried to recreate things that I liked. And truthfully, I made a lot of bad designs, right? But every bad design was another opportunity to get better. And I think that's something that gets lost when people talk about side hustles online. You see someone making $10,000 a month and think, what side hustle are they doing? But you don't see the years they spent developing the skill that allows them to make that money, right? It doesn't happen overnight. Don't focus so much on the money at the beginning. Of course, it's easy to, want to think that, and for most people that's probably eventually the goal, but you need to focus on becoming valuable, because the more valuable your skills become, the easier it becomes to actually monetize those skills. The third step is probably the one that took me the longest to really understand, and it's that you have to put yourself out there, right? If you don't, nobody knows you're there and nobody's going to pay you for these services. Being really good at something doesn't automatically mean people are going to find you, right? For example, you can be really good at graphic design, but if you don't post anything anywhere, or you don't, talk about it with people, nobody is going to know that. When I was starting out, I was showcasing my graphic design work on social media, actually. I think it was mostly Twitter at that point in time. I posted what I was making, I built a following around my work, and that kind of became a portfolio that people could actually see. And I think this is super important. If you want someone to pay you for a skill, make it easy for them to see what you're capable of. Don't just tell people, oh, I'm a graphic designer. You actually have to show them, right? Don't tell people you're good at photography. Show them, right? Your work can essentially become your resume. Now, one thing I did early on was work for free. Now, I know a lot of people don't want to hear that. And, I want to be careful with this because I don't think you should work for free forever. But when you're starting from absolutely nothing, you have a problem. You don't have experience and you don't have clients. And because you don't have clients, you don't have a portfolio. And because you don't have a portfolio, it's harder to get clients, right? It's a cycle, it's circular. So for a period of time, I was willing to do some work for free in order to build up my portfolio and get my name out there. And that gave me something much more valuable than the money I would have made from those individual projects. I got proof that I could actually do the work. I could point to things I'd created, I could show people examples. I could build that credibility from my work. But again, there's a difference between doing a few strategic free projects when you're starting and allowing people to take advantage of you indefinitely. Completely different. The goal is to use that early work to get to the point where you can charge for your skill. Eventually, I built a website where people could actually request work from me, so it showed prices for different packages and things like that. And this is where the process started becoming much more legitimate. Instead of someone seeing my work and having to figure out how to contact me, I could send them somewhere that explained what I did and allowed them to request work. And this was also part of putting myself out there, right? People could find my website. And I think this is another important lesson. Make it easy for someone to give you money. If someone's interested in your service, don't make them jump through 5 hoops to figure out how to hire you. Have a simple way for them to contact you, which has examples of your work, right? Explain what you offer and make the next step kind of obvious to them. You don't need some massive, complicated website. And I think for the most part, my website was kind of, I don't know if makeshift is the right word, but at one point I had I don't know if it was like a Google document or a Google site or something like that. Like I never actually paid for a website to have my own full link and stuff like that. I just use, I guess makeshift would be the right word, to kind of host it. So you don't need anything, luxurious and super, super official, right? You just need to put yourself out there. Eventually you can build up to the point where, you make yourself more official and you have your own link and things like that. But for me, I didn't really need that at this point in time. So again, you just need to make it easy for a potential customer to say, okay, I like this person's work. Here's how I can hire them. And here's something I think is important to understand and not a lot of people like to hear. Your first $1,000 might take a while. It definitely did for me. The beginning was slow. I wasn't getting a ton of clients. I wasn't making huge amounts of money, right? I was charging low at first. But every project gave me another piece of experience. Every client gave me another example of my work. Every person I worked with was another potential referral, right? Word of mouth is huge. And eventually, something really important started happening, which was word of mouth. Someone would see work I'd done for someone else and they'd recommend me to another person, and that person would become a client. Right then, it might happen again. And suddenly I wasn't starting every month at zero, right? I had built up a reputation. And that's one of the most powerful things about a service-based side hustle. You're not just making money from each individual job, you're actually building something that can potentially make getting the next job easier for you. And I want to make something very clear. You don't need to learn graphic design to make your first $1,000, right? A lot of people are going to watch this and think, okay, graphic design is the way to go. Graphic design was just my path personally. The bigger lesson is find something you are willing to get really good at that someone else is willing to pay you for. Maybe you're good at math and you can tutor, right? Maybe you're good at editing videos. Maybe you can build websites, or you're great at photography. Maybe you can help small businesses manage their social media. The side hustle doesn't have to be glamorous, right? It doesn't have to be this, like I said, a lot of people go on YouTube and they'll find videos, top side hustles to do. It differs for everyone, right? There's not a standard list, even though some YouTube videos will tell you, here are the top 5 side hustles to do this year, right? And while they have great examples, it's not going to work for everyone, and it's not necessarily the top 5 for you, right? You have things you're good at, or you have things that you're interested in, and that's what you should dive into. Like I said, it doesn't have to be glamorous, you just have to be solving a problem. So if you're sitting there thinking, okay, but how do I actually make my first $1,000? Here's the framework that I would follow if I had to do it all over again. Number 1, pick a skill. Find something you're interested in, and again, that people will actually pay for. Number 2, learn it. Use YouTube, courses, books, practice, whatever helps you personally improve. Number 3, get really good. Don't rush to monetize a skill that you haven't actually developed yet. Number 4, build proof. Create examples of your work so people can see what you do. For example, I know some lawn care businesses, and lawn care is a great thing that people are doing recently. But I see people making Instagram accounts and they're showing, for example, how to do edging on landscaping. It's something even I watch because for some reason I enjoy that type of content, right? I enjoy a fresh cut lawn and things like that. And people just put themselves out there online so they can be discovered. Number 6, get your first customers. You might have to start small. I did, right? You might even do a few projects for free or at a low price to build your portfolio, which is, again, that's what I did. And finally, keep going. Your first $1,000 might be, the hardest $1,000 you ever make because you're starting with no reputation, no clients, and no momentum. But once you've proven that someone will actually pay you for your skill, you've crossed a really important line, right? You've gone from having a skill to having a skill that actually makes money. So I think making your first $1,000 from a side hustle is less about finding the perfect side hustle and more about becoming valuable. Don't spend all your time searching for the easiest way to make money. Learn something, get really good at it, solve a problem for others, and show people what you can do. And then you ask them to pay you for it. And that's how I made my first $1,000 through graphic design. And if I could go back and tell my 15-year-old self one thing, it would be this: keep learning skills that people are willing to pay you for. Because a skill can be worth a lot more than you think, and your first $1,000 could be the beginning of something much bigger. So that's all for today's video, guys. If you enjoy this type of content, please feel free to subscribe, and if you have any questions, you can leave them in the comment section down below. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.